Hello everybody and welcome to this video. This is going to be an exhaustive look at this paper game that I made called Detuned World. If you're new around here, drop a sub. You can always unsub later if you don't like my content. But with that said, let's get right into this because we're going to be looking at the good, the bad, and all the hidden details in this print and play paper game that I've made. So this video is going to be broken up into 3 parts, starting here with an objective look at each page as quick as I can get through them while still showing everything. If you guys have seen the game and you're not new or you don't want a refresher, go to the description and there will be a timestamp for part 2 and onward. So taking a look at the cover page, it has a little gray plus sign in the top left corner. It has the Detuned World logo itself, which is just some warped black text. It has the Monster Pro Tile sprite, and it has 2 boxes, one with the initial buttons, and one with some credits to me and the year it was made. So upon starting the game, there's some text that says, "Welcome to the Detuned World." You learn that you've fallen through a portal, and you have to pick between 3 different player classes, which all have slightly varying stats that will affect your gameplay. And then below, you see that you get to start with 3 stat points. Your start location is Settlement 1, and your player items are 0, and with all of that set up, you get to click continue and actually begin your playthrough. So the next important page is your world map page, which is also your main menu. Here in the Detuned World itself, there are 15 different locations spread across an island and a continent, and then down below we have a big status box where you can keep track of items, stat points, your name, your start date, and of course the stats of your monsters and your character, plus you can draw your character in or print it out if you want. So next up is the items page, which explains the functions of the various items you can find when you're exploring the Detuned World, and in the bottom right it has a box with the names of each item. Moving on to the skills page, you have each individual skill with an icon for it, the name, the effect, and the stat points for it, all placed in a nice box with the drop shadow. So next up we have the broadcast page where you can read the messages sent out from the radio towers if you do have the specific item to use this page, and it features 4 different broadcasts plus the locations that they originate from and little drawings to represent the signals themselves. So finally, getting past all those menu pages, we're here at Settlement 1. So this is the archetypal location page since they will all follow this format. They have a danger level, a location name, nice little artwork to represent the space, some monsters may spawn, and then there will either be people occupying a location or radio broadcasts, and then of course there might be ground items. Moving on, here is Rocky Hill located near Settlement 1. Mellowcore spawns here, and that is an aggressive monster that will attack you automatically when entering the location. There's some radio broadcasts. On the ground there's 2 grimy bait and a razor. Here at the mines, the danger level is 2. Barrel Sight and Demoth both spawn here, and there's a miner that will engage you in combat, who drops a grenade if you win, and in addition there's 2 grimy bait on the ground. Moving down to the farthest bottom coast, you get to the lower cliffs, which has a danger level of 1. It has Scrapod, which is another aggressive monster, and there's a man that will give you a quest to defeat a Scrapod in exchange for the hand radio, plus of course there's that grimy bait on the ground. So here's the page for Settlement 2. We get a little more industrial settlement over here. Some roachers spawn here and farm spore spawns here. Down below there are 2 men that have been fused together that will give you a quest to help them separate themselves. And even lower than that, there's this guy that's just kind of a jerk to you and will toss you a razor and tell you to leave. And there's 2 grimy bait on the ground and a danger level of 0. Lower Bay, danger level of 1. Beta Shark and Mud Crab both spawn here. You have access to 2 radio broadcasts, and for the ground items there is 1 bowler hat. Up here at the stretch, you guys can see the water kind of recedes out a little bit, and you can encounter Armapod here. There are 2 more radio broadcasts, and there's a danger level of 2 plus 2 grimy bait on the ground. Upper Bay sustains that danger level of 2. Squidel spawns there, and the aggressive monster Lemon spawns there. You have access to 3 radio broadcasts, and on the ground you can even find a strange injection. Up north at Cape 1, the danger level is 3 because Mallbear spawns there and he is aggressive. There's only 1 radio broadcast, and for the ground items there are 2 fungal baits and 1 dagger. On the opposite end of the continent there's the Carve. It's a sandier location with saber cats that spawn and scuttlers that spawn. There's also a military man that will enter combat with you if you talk to him, and there's one fresh bait on the ground plus a danger level of 3. At the port, only alpha sharks will spawn, and there is a sailor member of the military who greets you like he's friendly, but of course he will challenge you to combat if you talk to him, and on the ground there's one grenade, and it has a danger level of 2. Making our way over to the island, much more powerful monsters spawn, such as Moosel and Brushlug. The danger level here at the forest is only 2. There are 3 radio broadcasts, and you can find 2 fresh bait or a bowler hat on the ground. Heading to the top of the island takes you to Cape 2. It also has a danger level of 2, and Iranutes will spawn there, and Supiles. There's again only 1 radio broadcast, and on the ground you can find a fungal bait. Here we are at the mountains. It has a danger level of 3. Eagle Lord spawns here and is aggressive. Rattlelord also spawns here, and there's a military woman who will mistake you for a cadet and give you a quest, plus you can find yourself a dagger on the ground. So finally making our way to the military base, it has a danger level of 4. Gardard spawns here and is aggressive, and below him you guys can see there's the final boss of the game, the chairman, who will drop a secret item, which is the portal opener or portal mine, which isn't included on the items page. And he of course is a very difficult battle, plus there is a grenade spawning on the ground. So finally we're going to be taking a brief look at this page. I will get into more detail later, but this is multi-cup, which works like the post game. There are 4 different tiers, each with different specifications, but when you defeat another player's group with your group, it causes a monster to spawn at a certain location, which you can then of course go attempt to tame, to add to your team or your collection. So finally we make it to the support page, which just has my email and some specifications for those that need help with the game or are confused. And then moving on, here's the Google Doc, which contains the rules of course. I'm not going to show it all in detail. And then of course we have this Google Drive where you can either get a PDF of the game or you can view each page digitally if you prefer not to print it. So despite these games being my own creation, I do truly believe there's a lot of great stuff about them and they are fun to play overall, and that's what this section is for, since I'm not going to diss myself too hard early in the video. So let's start out by talking about everything visual about the game, from the layout to the artwork, since this is the most apparent thing to anyone who's just printed it out. All the maps, monsters, and humans are shaded and drawn in the same style, which maintains continuity and lets it feel a little bit more like a real world. The goal with the locations of the game was to create a simple isometric view that would give players a good idea of what the location would be like, but still leave a lot up to the imagination to leave you wondering and curious about the area you're in. So while we're on the topic of visual stuff about the game, let's talk about the formatting of each location. They're basically designed like rectangular staircases that will guide your eyes in the proper order, since when you are visiting a new location, the first thing you should do is actually take a look at where you are. Next up, if there's aggressive monsters, that will have to be your second task, since those kind of work like blockage when you enter certain locations. And finally, you can deal with picking up items or talking to other people or even checking out radio broadcasts once you've dealt with any AG monsters and seen the area you're in. Of course, not everyone's eyes work the same, but that was the goal with this, was to work like a visual staircase for the player. So now that we've touched on the design philosophy, I want to get into the world building, since I did try to cram a lot of it into this game and there's a lot of little hidden details throughout it. So the first thing we're going to cover right here is Settlement 1 and why it is the way it is, because this location is basically a big subversion for everyone who plays the game. Since this is where you start, it's one of the only mandatory locations in the game, and you guys will see there's not much bad about it. It has a danger level of 0, 2 very weak and little cute monsters, and even a friendly person that'll give you some bait right off the bat. So the reason this is here is because it completely lowers players' expectations for what the rest of the world will be like, and therefore when you do start exploring, there's a little more value in the way that the world changes up and gets more dangerous. If you guys have played, you know exactly what I mean. So as the map opens up for you after Settlement 1, you are free to go anywhere you want, and for that purpose there are a few locations with signs of development placed around them, because early on you don't have a concept that the military is in the game yet, but you still get this vague, eerie feeling that there's something going on out there since there are these structures built. And speaking of little hidden details, we can take note of Barrelsight's design, knowing that mines are dug out with TNT and explosives and there just happens to be some barrels left behind. We can see how that creature came to be. So the entire game has this underlying theme relating to radio signals. It's called Detuned World. You can pick up this item and most of the story comes from these radio broadcasts. And of course the physical manifestation of that is that within the many locations you guys will see sonar towers that you later learn are built by the military. So let's get into that little idea of the radio broadcasts themselves. So the nice thing about the radio broadcast is it allows me to tell the story to the players in a way that doesn't force anyone's hand. For example, if you don't want to nerd out and learn all you can about the world, if you're just playing the game to see the monsters and build a team, you could completely avoid the story at all costs. But if you're curious about what's going on and you want to flesh out the world on your own accord, you can get this item and explore reading the broadcasts as you go, since they are distributed around the map. Another cool detail is the broadcasts that are distributed on the pages also correspond with specific towers shown on the map, such as this tower at Cape 1. So if you're a longtime fan of the Detuned World series, you guys probably already know about this Mallbear lore. Basically, Mallbear's super powerful as it's reflected in its stats, and it is aggressive, and they spawn at the far north location of Cape 1. But if you check out the radio broadcasts, you'll find this Mallbear specifically caused the death of a few military members, and their signal goes flat to reflect that. But when you do get up there, you can defeat him for yourself, and you'll notice there's a knife left behind on the ground, just a fun little detail for you guys to check out. So the last thing I want to talk about is the design of the military base page. The military base itself is drawn in an ominous way. There's bigger smoke billowing out of it than anywhere else. It has a big flag waving, and it looks like it's made out of metal. It's posted up on this hill with deep shadows and a big farm. In itself, it has a danger level of 4, which is unparalleled. There's nothing else with a danger level of 4, and that's for good reason, because starting out you get to the door and there's a Guardard there, which is a sort of weird military improved monster with 10 attack, 45 defense, and 3 speed, so he's guaranteed to weaken you up a little with that defense stat. But once you get past that, that's only your mini boss, because then comes the chairman. And for anyone who's played the game, if you didn't grind stat points and overpower yourself, the chairman will give you a challenge as shown here in this gameplay clip.
Alright, and finally we've got Rattlelord, 27 attack, 23 HP, and 13 speed. Oh no, oh no.
Let's talk about Multi-Cup. We've gone over some of my favorite things about the main game, but Multi-Cup is what ties it together with a nice post-game. As you guys might know, Multi-Cup features 4 tiers for PvP against other players in their groups. You do get to duel with them, and the winner gets a prize as new monsters will spawn at previous locations. You still have to go out and get that exploratory aspect of the game, because those monsters are out there in the wild for you to hunt and find after your victory as a nice little reward. It's almost like a new quest. Not to mention, Multi-Cup also features a rating system. Total wins, total losses. Your rating is your wins minus your losses. So in theory, Multi-Cup adds an infinite amount of playability without ever having to reset your game, because you could just keep challenging other players and getting that rating to a higher and higher number. So yeah, I think this was definitely a necessary addition to the game. And with that, we're going to move on to the cons. So these games do have some problems, and it wouldn't be fair if we only talked about the stuff that I like about them. With that, we're going to begin part 3, the not so good stuff. One of the big inspirations for my art style is the first generation of Pokemon games. But speaking of those games, let's talk about the balance of Detuned World, because there are some things that are not so balanced. So let's address the problem with speed and attack. Basically, in the main game, most of the enemy boss monsters and other people, their monsters might have buffed speed for sure, but none of them have crazy speed, which means if you were to invest a good amount of speed points and attack points, you would instantly be able to sweep most of the main battles. So while this isn't really a problem for most players, if you happen to choose that route because it's easier, the game's going to lose its value, and it's not going to be as fun when you play like that. This is a problem with the game design, however, because many monsters have naturally high speed and attacks, which means even if you're not investing a ton of stat points, you're still going to get that chance of accidentally sweeping an enemy boss. So let's talk about the amount of monsters in the game. There should have been more. There are 28. Without multi-cup, there were only 24. And this isn't a huge problem competitively, since there's obviously going to be a few select monsters that shine above the rest and people want to use. But there's a good variety in ADS as far as that goes. The bigger problem, and this is a bit of a meme, there are 3 sharks. Out of 28 monsters, 3 of them are sharks. Let's roast the skill system. Grenadier, decent skill, gives you a little edge on aggressive monsters, it can save you. Sneak, a little weird, because not very many AGs have attack less than 15, so is it really worth it just to get to sneak past Guardart at the end of the game, pretty much? But then Farmer, now that's a cool skill, 15 stat points though, 15 battles just to get double bait. And by that point, you've probably already explored and gotten most of the bait out of the ground items. Thief, stupid skill, completely useless, 20 stat points. You would have to complete 20 battles, 4 quests, etc. That's a lot of stat points for being able to gain a quest reward. Why is that dumb? Because there's only 2 or 3 quests in the game. 20 stat points is not a fair price for that. Gambler, on the other hand, is an important skill and is pretty much the reason that the skill system exists, since there needed to be a fair way to continue getting bait and items after you complete the game. But other than that, those skills are just pushovers. Alright guys, we're finished with our exhaustive look at this game, Detuned World, and it's time to give a final verdict on it. Of course, as you guys probably all know, I do love this game, and I'm going to continue loving it as I play it more and more. It's a great game, and I don't feel arrogant in saying that because I did work ridiculously hard on it, and it wasn't always a great game. I've been building these up for so long, so just know if I did it, you can do it too. And drop a like, subscribe, comment with me if you disagree with me about anything. And yeah, that's about it.